Alright guys, this video is on deer management tips. This is kind of a combination of everything that I've done as far as the food plotting portion of management goes. This is also going to touch base with when will I see results video that I did in my deer. So here we go. We got many things here we can cover, and one of them, of course, is how do I get bigger deer? If I'm following what everybody has told me, do I know that I'm actually getting the best potential out of my deer? Well, the only way to know at it is really go into a detailed look of how you're managing your deer. Now, I totally understand people have very small tracts of land to where deer management is practically impossible. And I'm referring to if you've only got 5 acres of land to hunt and you can't really manage deer, I totally understand that. But you can still at least do a few things to help them out. Now, if you've got a larger tract of land, which I have roughly 24 acres and some change, you can do something with that. I mean, trust me, you can still grow some really nice deer on that type of property. Now, for those of you that are kind of on the other end of the spectrum and you have larger tracts of land, deer management can take on a whole new meaning in how you handle your deer. So I'm talking people that own hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, tens of thousands of acres or more. If the larger the acreage you own, the better off you are. So I'm not trying to bust people's bubbles here that own smaller tracts of land. It is still possible to grow big deer on little tracts of land. It's just your management effect won't have its full effect because the deer is not going to stay on that little 5-acre tract all the time. It's just not going to happen. These are free ranging deer. They do what they want to, but you can at least affect them to some degree on small tracts of land. So let's look at a quick review of what I've done based on the videos I've posted. If you look at what I've done throughout the channel or the group, you have noticed I have really focused on soil improvements. This is basically doing a, kind of like a boots on the ground survey of your property. Understand what is around you, even beyond your property. So I would be looking at neighboring property over here, all the way around me. And you want to do that for at least 3 to 4 miles around you to really determine what's a good game plan based on what's around you. So if you're trying to get either more deer on your property or larger deer on your property, you're looking for better quality deer than what you normally hunt, you can base a game plan just based on what's around you. So in this particular case, this wood land does not just keep going forever. There's going to be other houses. There's going to be rural farmland surrounding this. There's a big dump at the top of the ridge. And then you go this direction, you've got a mix of, once you cross the road down here, you got a mix of woods and farmland for several miles. Nobody has put out food plots except for the guy that lives up here now, because I basically started doing it and he saw what I was getting. And then the guy across the road, who was the only one that did it about 15 years ago, except his was kind of the old methods and it just basically destroyed his ground. But he had the king of the big deer that were taken around here. Now it's starting to reverse. I'm taking the bigger deer. He's seeing smaller deer. So by doing soil improvements, adding good high quality food, you can raise the size of your deer this way. Now the other method that some of you probably already know about, but if you're new to hunting in general, there is something we call the buck to doe ratio. So that basically means, now this is by example, if you was to ask me what my buck to doe ratio is, I would probably say it's 4 to 1 or possibly 5 to 1. And that means for every buck that is living, there is approximately 4 to 5 does available per buck. That ratio is not terribly bad, but it's also not the best it could be. If you're trying to gain more size, not only out of your bucks, but even your does, if you could get that ratio closer to 1 to 1, if it's 1 to 2, you're doing a great job. But if it's 1 to 1, it is a gold mine for how many bucks you see here versus the does. It will drastically change your opinion on when to hunt, what to hunt, which buck do I need to shoot. Because in most cases, if you look at the situation that hunters are in, especially on these smaller tracts of land, you've got typically that one awesome target buck that is so much bigger than your other surrounding bucks. Or you may have a couple or 3 of them. If you're getting above that, hey, you're starting to get into some pretty good territory on small tracts of land. Now, for those of you that have, lots of acres, I'm talking hundreds of acres, thousands or 10,000 plus acre tracts, that's laughable if you have 3 good bucks on your property. You should be able to say, I've got more than 50 to 100 good bucks easily with that tract of land that size. You could have hundreds of good bucks if you've done it right. So your view of how to hunt the property can drastically change, especially if you stick to your goals. So it'd be a different story for me. So if I was over here on my hunting box hunting, knowing the bucks that are around my area, I've only got a handful of good target bucks. If I saw a decent 8-pointer that has potential, a person would be more likely to shoot that deer because it's a little bit on the better end of the deer that's around here, and you're going to take out that deer that could have been a potential giant. But you don't really have the option to cherry pick like some people do. So in my case, I am trying to be as patient as possible and only shoot deer that are bucks that are a certain point style. We generally do a 4 points on one side rule here. I don't put width restrictions on deer. We just try to give the deer at least one additional year of opportunity to grow into something special. Unless I know there's a baby deer that his first rack is like 8 points, I'm not shooting that deer. So there's all kinds of little substitutes that I add to that. I just have to know what deer I'm after. So now, why is the 1 to 1 ratio so important? If you're doing the food plot, soil improvements, you're trying to do the best job you can with that, you've added more food than the deer can handle, you've only got one part of this goal intact. So if you've worked on your woods, if you've worked on your food plots, there's still other things you have to control in order to get the best return. Now the ratio is important because I studied pen raised deer, and anybody that's on this channel that's done pen raised deer, you feel free to chime in the comments. But the more a buck breeds, the less potential he shows in his antlers. So if you had a deer that had, a bunch of sticker points, drop tines, some odd character points, and you have a high doe ratio versus your bucks, that deer could breed himself so hard that he could either die from it or severely reduce his health, and then his antlers may not even look right compared to what you thought you were going to get. He may look like he's lost 20, 30 inches of antler the next year. It's all because your buck to doe ratio is off. And if you're new to managing deer, always manage your does first. Now this is going to tie back into my video about when will I see results in my deer. If you have not seen that video, go back and look at it. But if you're trying to get a property fixed up to make it a super hunting place, always shoot the older does. Don't shoot the younger ones. They are the ones that are unlocking that genetic potential in your bucks. The old does, the only thing you can really do with them is try to put on some weight and help them produce a slightly larger baby. But it's that baby is what you don't need to shoot. Let it grow, let it produce. And then do the same thing. When that baby becomes a mature doe, and let's say it's a 3 or 4 year old, take it out. Let the next generation take over. The faster you can remove the older generation that is stuck under this grind of terrible soil and horrible habitat, the faster the results start coming to your deer. That younger generation is the one you got to build up. So everything you're doing in here sets the table for the other deer. And of course, your current deer will be happy just because they've got more food, but you've got to think about the future. So shoot your older does and then work your way to a 1-to-1 ratio if possible. I know this is not for everybody because we all have different size land tracts. We might have different situations. A landowner may put restrictions on you. It's just do the best you can with what you got. So now, if you followed all those check marks, there's still an additional set to do. And that would be the other animals that live here. That would be your squirrels, possums, coons, skunks, wild hogs, bears, and coyotes, rabbits. All small game and other large game animals have some sort of effect on your deer herd. If your goal is just deer, then you might want to include hunting turkeys on your list. You definitely need to go squirrel hunting. You want to keep these squirrels in check. If you do not, the squirrels will rob your deer of a lot of food because all they do is forage for nuts all day long this time of year. Deer are not going to do that. Deer will forage until they're full, and then they will lay down for a little while, maybe a couple hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours, and not do anything, while a squirrel is constantly doing, running around, picking up nuts, trying to store it. There's a high competition for nut crops. So keep your squirrels in check. Always go out and at least take your limit for the day. If you see that you still have a high volume of squirrels, keep hunting legally until you can see a difference in your squirrel population. If you could cut it, if it's overrun, you can cut it in half. You'd be shocked at how many more nuts will still be laying on the ground just by reducing squirrels. Now, the other thing is you want to reduce coyotes. They also kill fawns. They carry diseases with them. They also attack people's small dogs. They can also attack children if they are rabid. They generally try to stay away from people, but they can be aggressive if they are forced to be so. Bobcats kill deer. They kill not only fawns, but they have been known to kill full-size deer. Do not underestimate a bobcat. If you've got a lot of them on your camera, your fawn population is going to be hurting. You need to keep them in check. So there's all kinds of things that play a factor into how your deer finish out or how your average deer looks. And then when you manage all the predatory animals, there's another factor that kicks into your deer management that you may not realize. You have greatly reduced a deer's stress. I watch when deer come up to our feeder, when we have it up here for supplemental feeding, do they come up scared? Are they constantly looking around? If they're doing that and they seem to be on edge the whole time they are there, that is a sign that you have too many predators in your woods. If a deer comes up and it's just kind of being lackadaisical, stretching, taking its sweet time, and most of the time you see its head's buried in the food and it's not really paying attention, that deer has a low stress posture, which means that deer has a much better shot of getting a lot bigger. This applies to your bucks. Guys, you don't realize how valuable low stress is to growing a giant. It makes a huge difference in your deer. Again, for those of you that are pen raised guys that are watching this channel, feel free to chime in on that. Stress is a huge factor in growing big deer. So remember, good food plots. You've got to get these food plots pumping in order to get your deer to show better results. Keep your buck doe ratio 1-to-1 if you can do that. And also be aware that the tract of land you own determines kind of what size you're going to be dealing with for deer. If you own, like what I do, which is roughly 24 acres, I'm still not going to get the full effect of my management program on a deer. The bare minimum that most experts recommend is about 1,200 acres, and that should cover most bucks' roaming range. You're still going to lose deer at 1,200 acres to neighbors, but you kind of get the idea. The larger of an area that you control, that you fix up, greatly affects your deer. And then, of course, get out there and be a small game hunter. Be a predatory hunter. Keep your hogs in check big time. Keep your bears in check if you've got a bear population problem. Everything needs to be under control if you want your deer to grow bigger. So if you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll be bringing more content like this and trying to hopefully show a progression year to year of how this brittle dry food plot will start producing one day, and this will affect my deer once again. So you all have a great day and good luck on your hunts.